In this lesson, I am going to teach you how to make slab constructions for your second assigned project, like these gorgeous examples from former Cascade students. When we created our pinch pots, the only tools we really needed were our hands. But for the slab project, we are going to be using a few different tools. Your clay knife. You can also use a toothpick to cut through clay. In a pinch, a pencil will do to cut through clay. I have 2 pencils. We'll see why in a little bit. If you have a rolling pin, you may find that useful, but ask permission first because your family might prefer that their food rolling pin does not touch the clay. If you do choose to use a rolling pin with clay, make sure you clean it thoroughly when you're done. I have my finger bowl with some water. You see that I sliced into my sponge, just cut a slit about halfway through it, and that allows me to just stick it on the edge of my finger bowl. So convenient. Doesn't leave a wet spot on my workspace. You will also need your slip. You might want a popsicle stick to stir your slip with, although you could use your finger. And you might find it handy to use your big popsicle stick, the tongue depressor, because you can use this straight edge to cut into the clay. These are just some tools you could use. Feel free to improvise with other materials you may have on hand. A slab is a flat piece of clay. There are a few different slab making techniques that we can use to turn our sphere of moist stage 2 clay into a flat slab. One method you could call the patty cake method. And just like in the pinch pot assignment, you want to go for approximately pinky finger thickness in your slab. Here is a different slab making technique. This is called throwing a slab, and it can be fun, but you need to make sure you have a nice, stable, sturdy workspace because it is what it sounds like. Start by just getting your sphere smooshed. And I should add that I have my table covered in what was a few minutes ago an old t-shirt and is now just a couple pieces of fabric. If you don't have an old t-shirt to spare, no problem. Some paper towels could work fine. You can use an old dishcloth, whatever you have around. All right, so here's the throwing part. So when you make it land, you want it to sort of rock across the surface of your table. And each time you throw it, you should rotate it and flip it, trying to get it to come out as even as possible. This method does take some practice to get right, but with a little patience and trial and error, you can start to get it stretched out pretty nice and even. Having something down on your work surface so the clay will not stick each time is key. All right, so there's my thrown slab. Now I'm going to show you a third method of forming your sphere into a slab. You guessed it, it's with the rolling pin. And in this case, having 2 pieces of fabric is really handy. If you only have one, you can just fold it in half and that will work. So start by just flattening out your sphere. Get it started. Tuck it in between the blankets, make sure there's no wrinkles, and then evenly and gently use your rolling pin. Here's a cool trick. If you want to make sure it comes out even, take 2 pencils and place them beside the clay. Your rolling pin is not going to be able to go down past those pencils, so don't press too hard, okay? But it should smush the clay to the height of the pencil. So if you're going to try this, do make sure the 2 pencils or whatever you're using are of approximately the same height. exactly the same height would be ideal. And this looks great. This is slightly thicker than the ones that I made before because the pencils were just a bit thicker than what I had been previously doing. However, approximately pinky thickness is perfect, so this would be a great slab to use. If you don't have a rolling pin, don't worry. There's a lot of other ways that you could still use the rolling pin technique. For example, here's my water bottle. Can make a great rolling pin. Slabs, because they're flat and have more surface area, do dry out faster than spheres of clay. So if you're working with slabs, you can add water to keep them moist. Another tool you could use as a rolling pin is a sideways jar. You could use a soda can or bottle as well. Anything that has cylindrical sides. A shampoo bottle might work. You can use your disinfectant supplies. When you have a nice even slab with a smooth surface, and you can see here that approximately 1 pound of clay just about fits my hand spread out on there. You can wrap your clay around a variety of molds. So one of my favorite choices is a takeout cup from fast food. You could also use a toilet paper or paper towel roll. You could use a large or small mason jar. You could use your disinfecting supplies, really anything you have around that is cylindrical, or a tapered cylinder like a to-go cup is technically a cone section. You can imagine those sides would continue up to form the peak of a cone, but it's just been cut here. But I'll show you how to do cylinders, cone sections, and cones with points as well. So I'm going to show you how to make a cylinder that wraps around a toilet paper tube, but you could do this same thing on a larger cylinder just by using a little bit more clay. I recommend you cover your cylinder with newspaper. It's a small cylinder, so a small piece will do. You can do this same thing with a much larger cylinder. You can just tuck the ends in if they're open. You could use a piece of tape in the case where you couldn't tuck it in at the end. I want to cut off a straight edge, and I'm going to use the popsicle stick. So just chop nice and clean, and I'll save this clay. Now I'm just going to roll the clay around the form. I want to leave a little bit of an overlap, maybe about 1/4 inch. And I want to definitely chop the bottom even. You can also use your bamboo knife for this. It's up to you if you want to make the top even, like this student did, or if you want to make yours intentionally, decoratively uneven, which I actually find useful in a pencil holder, having walls of varying heights at the rim. So I'll show you what it looks like if I choose to leave this untrimmed. Roll that clay around. Now this clay is super moist, so I know that if I blend and smooth this seam thoroughly, that this will be a strong attachment. If you have been working for a while and your slab is perhaps less moist or leather hard, be sure to score and slip your seam. But in moist clay, blending is sufficient. You see I'm using my thumbs to blend. I like this gentle edge, but this sharp corner I don't, so I'm just going to tear this down. Oh, I think this is quite nice, and I can use this to put flowers in. But I need to put a bottom on it so the water doesn't pour out. Just recycle the scraps that you have, the bit of water, fold the water on the inside. Try to prevent air bubbles. Be careful to make your second slab the same thickness for structural integrity as your piece is drying. So this base is plenty big, and I am now going to use my bamboo knife to cut about a 1/4 inch border all the way around. Now I don't want to press down hard and cut through at the seams. Instead, I want to just very gently blend and smooth, making sure that this vase will hold water. You can see on mine it's a bit wider here at the base. That actually makes it a little more stable. So I'm not going to try to smooth that in. I could a bit, but I want mine to be really steady and not tip over when there's flowers in there. Same as with the pinch pot, you can tap it on the table. But now I don't want to leave the toilet paper roll inside there. So the next step is to pull it out. You do need to pull it out before you let your clay dry. Why? Because this clay shrinks by 12% as it dries. If there's something inside there that prevents it from shrinking, there is nowhere else for the clay to go, and it causes your sculpture to crack. So it's easy to prevent that cracking by just pulling out what's in there. It seems stuck, but that is why we have the newspaper. Peel back the newspaper just until you can reach that cardboard tube. Pull out the tube, and then the rest of the newspaper that's stuck inside should be pretty easy to remove if you twist and gently pull. So it got a little bit tipped to the side as I was pulling out the tube, but that's okay. Just gently. I definitely will decorate this maybe with some vertical lines. Okay, for the next slab, we're going to do the same thing, but instead of on a cylinder, we're going to try on a cone section. This is larger, so we're starting with a bigger piece of clay. Remember, the first one was the size of my 2 hands. This one has some extra. Wrap your form in paper. You could tape the bottom, but it's not really necessary. Wrap your slab around. I recommend cutting off the excess clay at the base so that yours can stand upright. As before, artist's choice, will you leave the top uneven or will you cut it? This time I think I'll show you what it will look like if I'll choose to cut it. And I don't think I want to make it as tall as the base cup. I think I want to make it about to here. And you can use your bamboo knife. You can use one of the tongue depressors. I recommend you do this step while the form is still inside because it gives you something to press down against as you're cutting. So next step here is to blend the seam better than I did originally and start to smooth out the rim. Next step is to put the bottom on. Alright, I like the look of this. For a big sturdy coffee mug, now I just need a handle. Here's how you can make a slab handle. Cut a ribbon from your slab. Make sure it's a comfortable size for your hand, but remember it will shrink by 12%. So if you make it just barely big enough, it might be too small. You can just pinch or cut the size that feels right. You may be able to just blend and smooth your handle on, but it is the worst if you are holding a mug of cocoa and the handle falls off. I don't want that to happen to you. So let's score and slip to make this an extra strong attachment. We'll be using a toothpick to score, make scratches, and we'll be using the slip, like the Pottery glue. Perfect creamy slip. Great. So I choose where I'm going to attach the handle, make a little mark with the toothpick, and then I want to rough the surface, scoring or scratching it. And I want to do the same for both ends of my handle where they will attach to the cup. Then just apply a bit of slip. Make sure it goes down in those scratch marks I just made. And then when putting the handle on, a bit of pressure to smoosh the two pieces together. If you ever find a spot that is starting to feel a bit thin, you can add what is called a reinforcing coil. Just a little bit of extra clay, nice and moist, rolled into a thin piece that you can add on right where it feels a bit weak. Smooth it in. Don't add too much water because water weakens and softens your clay. If yours is starting to sag, you can keep your cup inside for a little bit until it starts to become leather hard. But please don't leave it in there too long because I don't want your beautiful slab cup to crack. I always put extra care into the finishing work that I do around the rim because that's where somebody's mouth touches and you don't want to have any rough or jagged places. If you find that the weight of your handle is distorting your cup by pulling it down, you can create just a simple prop to help hold your handle and the side of your cup right where you want them, just as a support while the clay is drying. One more thing I'd like to show you is if you want to make yours a pitcher to pour lemonade or cream, here's an easy way to make a pour spout. You're going to pull down right across from the handle. At the same time, support the clay with the first two fingers of your other hand. It makes a perfect pour spout. Now I'm going to show you how to make a cone shape out of a slab. Start by cutting a half circle. You could trace something round like a dish or a bowl and then cut that in half, but I am just going to freehand it. Okay, it's not perfect, but is close enough. Now, one side is straight. You want to fold that straight side in half and then blend over the seam. If you want your cone to sit flat, you will need to cut it even. You could also use your cone as a lid on your cylinder form to make something like a birdhouse or a castle. Your assignment for this project is to make something three-dimensional out of your slab. You can decide if yours will be a cylinder or a cone section. You can decide if yours will be a functional piece like a mug, pitcher, vase, pencil holder, toothbrush holder, etc. Or if yours will be a decorative sculpture of something like a castle or a rocket or a tree or an ice cream cone. Artist's choice. What you make must be three-dimensional, however. I do not want you to turn in a flat slab of clay meant to sit flat on the table or wall. For this project, I am asking you to create something in the round. If you have made a cylinder or a cone section out of a clay slab before and would like to try a more advanced project, you can try making a flat-sided form like a box, but it is much more difficult than working with curved slabs. So try that if you are up for a challenge. I'm going to leave this bag open so that my pottery can start to dry overnight. If I could fit both of these in the same bag, I would, but I think it will be better if they each have their own.